Hello there. In today's video I would like to talk about hardened leather armor, or cuir bouilli, and an idea I've had regarding it. Now, cuir bouilli is one of those lost technologies. We can't say for certain how it was made, and it seems like every armor maker's got their own technique for hardening leather. Some people bake wet leather over a form until it becomes hard like wood. Other people soak leather in hot water until it becomes slightly harder and stiffer, or else boil it until it becomes brittle like plastic. My favored technique is to pour boiling water over it from a kettle. This will harden only the outer layers of the leather but leave the inside soft, preventing the leather from being too brittle. I will then coat the leather in oil to give it a little bit of its flexibility back, and then repeat the process until the desired hardness and toughness is achieved. In this way, the outside of the leather gets hard, whereas the inside stays soft and tough. The two compensating for each other's weaknesses, sort of like laminating steel. Other people talk about treating the leather with wax or glue. Recently, however, I had an idea that in recreating leather armor, we might be starting with the wrong material to begin with. Well, what do you mean by that? The vegetable tanning process has remained basically the same for 1,000 years. How could the material be wrong? One of my hobbies is tanning buckskins. A while ago, my family ordered a cow from the Mennonite farmers, and we asked the butcher to keep the skin. At the time, I was experimenting with walnut dyes, and I had a great big pot of leftover walnut extract. From the effect that this had on my hands and the taste it left in the cooking pot, I surmised that this walnut extract must have tannins in it. So, knowing nothing more than that, I decided to try some vegetable tanning. Not having a clue what I was doing, the end result didn't turn out great. I soaked the pieces in the solution for about a month. Reading up on vegetable tanning after the fact, I learned that you're supposed to soak them for 6 months to a year. What I ended up with was something that was sort of half-tanned. The outside of the hide is tanned leather, but the core is still rawhide. I also didn't soften the leather beyond giving it a coat of oil, so it's very stiff and rigid. Now, historically, this sort of half-tanned leather is what was used for shoe soles. Because its core is still dense rawhide, it's a lot tougher than standard leather. But because it's got the outside of leather, it handles wet better than rawhide. So it's occurred to me that maybe armor makers in the past used half-tanned leather rather than full-tanned leather to make armor. Aside from being potentially tougher, it would also be a lot cheaper because it's only soaked for 1/12 of the time and it doesn't require the softening procedure, the softening being the most time-consuming and laborious part of making leather. Let's do a test and see how it compares to my other leather armor. The broadhead arrow penetrated almost to the hilt and went through the armor by about 1.5 inches. The bodkin arrow bounces off harmlessly. And again, the bodkin arrow bounces off harmlessly. This time the arrow stuck in the leather without penetrating. The broadhead arrow went through the leather by about 1.25 inches. Now let's try the half-tanned leather. The bodkin arrow bounces off. And again. And a third time. This time it penetrated the leather, but only by a hair. The broadhead arrow stuck in the leather, penetrating by about 1.5 inches. This time the broadhead arrow only penetrated by about 1/4 inch. And again, more or less the same result. This time the broadhead arrow went in a little bit over 1 inch. So all in all, it seems to have done more or less the same or slightly better against the broadheads, and slightly worse against the bodkins. If we look at the bodkin strikes, we can clearly see that it's punched through the half-tanned leather, whereas on the full-tanned leather it's only left dents here and there. It's interesting to me that the antler arrows from a previous test seem to have left bigger dents. So overall, I think that's pretty good for a piece of unheat-treated, badly tanned leather. And I would say that this idea warrants further thought and experimentation. That's pretty much all I have to say for now. I hope you found this interesting. Goodbye.